Planning a wedding and feeling overwhelmed? Well, Simply Eloped makes it easy. With over 14,000 elopements and vow renewals planned in 37 stunning U.S. destinations, their planners got you covered. All-inclusive packages connect you with over 700 incredible vendors, which will cut your stress, your cost, and the complexity. They're a people core business in the age of AI. Just head on over to simplyelope.com to start your journey. That's simplyeloped.com. Southern Nevadans consistently list water as one of their top concerns about the future here. And to make things worse, the Colorado River states have just missed a crucial deadline to come to an agreement about how to manage our dwindling water supply. So today on CityCast Las Vegas, I'm joined by UNR professor Elizabeth Cobley, who has been an active observer of the Colorado River Accord negotiations, and she's also talked to stakeholders all along the river to help us figure out where we are and where we're going when it comes to water. It's Tuesday, November 18th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. What deadline did the Colorado River states just miss, and why is it kind of a big deal?
So thinking about this deadline that we've seen in the news that the Colorado River states missed this week, we need to think about why they're even at the negotiating table together. So the Colorado River, which provides water to 40 million people in the western United States, is what we call over-allocated. So essentially, we've given out more rights.
That sounds very a kind way to say that they've completely screwed up and screwed everyone over. But okay, so over-allocated. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, perfect. We've given more rights to water than there actually is in most years, right? And so what that leads to is us overdrawing our reservoir supplies. Mm-hmm. And as a result of those actions, coupled with climate change, which means we're getting less water in the Colorado River each year, the states are at a place where they need to figure out how to remanage the Colorado River to be more sustainable. And this sort of coincides with historic policy in the basin. Right now, our core of how we manage shortages in the basin is based under a policy or a set of guidelines we developed in 2007. And those are actually expiring at the end of this year. They're only good for 20 years. So they expire now and they really get us through October. And so this negotiation was about a set of new guidelines to replace those expiring ones. I'll say, as someone who studies this process from the outside, I've been thinking about this for 10 years, looking forward to these next set of guidelines. And now we're at them almost expiring. And it's kind of shocking that we don't have a plan, right? And so all these deadlines have been meant to encourage decision makers to get closer, but we just haven't gotten there in recent times.
You mentioned there's 7 states. I'm not going to challenge myself. Well, maybe I will challenge myself right now. Obviously, us in California, I'd imagine Arizona, Utah, California is the big one. New Mexico is probably around. Which one am I missing?
You are missing Utah and Wyoming.
Oh, no, I got Utah. Wyoming was one I was missing.
Did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Wyoming, poor Wyoming. I always forget about Wyoming. It's so far away. And of course, Colorado. They're the cause of all this problem with all their beautiful lakes and water and rivers. So, okay. Have alliances formed with various states? I'm curious how that's shaping up. If we're partnered with anybody, or is everyone bullying on us? I mean, is this like a Mean Girls situation where we're the subject of a burn book or someone else's? Does everyone in California spill?
I would say Nevada is actually in a very good place in these negotiations. And that's in part because Nevada has invested a lot in efficiency and conservation over the last few decades. So even though the state has the smallest allocation in the Colorado River Basin, they are actually underusing the amount of water that's available to them. And they've been able to be resilient and weather cuts.
Yes. The only thing we're really smart at when it comes to planning is our water use. Because we had to.
Planning water use. Exactly. Yeah. Nevada had to. And Southern Nevada Water Authority really stepped up and was very successful and is a model that's being exported to other places now.
I should mention they are one of our sponsors, but we're not saying that just because.
Oh, great. Yeah. I didn't know that. Wonderful. Yes. Yeah, so as far as alliances in the rest of the basin, there has always been a divide between what we call the upper basin states and the lower basin states. So the lower basin states are Nevada, California, and Arizona. And the upper basin states are Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. And New Mexico always throws people off why it's an upper basin state, but it's because of where their tributary water from the Colorado River meets up. So,
Okay.
um, and the four upper basin states negotiate together. They have an institution called the Upper Colorado River Commission that they work together through and usually come out with a pretty united voice in policy processes. The
Hmm.
lower basin states don't have an institution, but they have historically worked quite well together. We did have a moment in time a couple years ago where we essentially saw a 6 versus 1, where it was all the states versus California. But that was pretty atypical in Colorado River negotiations.
That's very
Typically, we
fetch.
see,
Very fetch.
yeah. We see the upper basin and the lower basin kind of duking it out. And that's exactly where we are in these negotiations right now. And the original Colorado River Compact that you mentioned allocates big chunks of water to the upper and to the lower basin. They get equal amounts, 7.5 million acre feet every year. So right now, the negotiations are really about when we don't have that much water in the river to divide between the basins, who
Hmm.
takes the cuts?
How is Nevada doing in these discussions? I mean, what do we need? What do we want? And what do we think we're going to get?
Right now, the lower basin has basically put up an alternative that says we will take the first 1.5 million acre feet of cuts in this short system. That is because the lower basin has been in some instances overusing water in the past, and they are using their full allocation or most of their full allocation in most years. And so they've said, we'll step up and we'll come into compliance and make sure we're using only our 7.5 million acre feet. For people who are water wonks, we talk about this in the terms of resolving the structural deficit in the system. It's a weird term, but the lower basin states said they'll do that.
Yeah, I use that in my personal life as well because there are so
Yeah.
many structural deficits. But yes.
So the lower basin states are already saying or have already put up a proposal that says we will do these first cuts. And then what they're asking is in situations beyond that, we want the upper basin to share in further cuts, further reductions. The upper basin, on the other hand, has not historically used all of their water. I believe they use about 5 of their 7.5 million acre feet on an average year. They haven't developed all that water. And the upper basin is saying, no, we take cuts every year because of hydrology, because of climate change. We're sort of subject to what Mother Nature delivers.
Hmm.
So we shouldn't be responsible for any of these cuts. The lower basin should shoulder all of them, or at least the vast majority of them. And that's the main sticking point right now.
But it really is California that's screwing us up, right? Aren't they taking a lion's share? Aren't they the ones that aren't good like we are, who are using it for all the ag?
So California has a much bigger legal allocation than we have, and they are using their legal allocation. And so legally, they're not doing anything wrong. You mentioned that California has a lot of agriculture, and that's something that Nevada doesn't have, but the other 6 states in the basin all do. And across the basin, about 80% of Colorado River water is used in agriculture. We've done a really good job at making cities efficient and making domestic uses and uses in our homes and casinos and hotels pretty darn efficient. Southern Nevada recycles, I believe it's 99% of water used indoors, which is really incredible. In the agricultural sector, while we have seen some conservation, we just haven't seen as much. So I could see why people would argue California is using all of this water, but they have a legal entitlement to it, and they're figuring out how to sort of split it between their ag sectors and their cities.
Hmm. Well, I mean, legal right doesn't mean that they're doing the right thing. And I'm just wondering if Nevada's getting screwed because we're too good at water efficiency and conservation.
So right now there really isn't a proposal or even an idea on the table to reopen the Colorado River Compact and to change people's allocations. I think, if anything, Nevada wants to make sure that California pitches in and does their part in taking reduced deliveries under shortage. That's exactly what they would want with Arizona too. We can't be the only people taking shortages in Nevada. So I think the Nevada negotiator, as far as their interaction with the lower basin states, really wants to make sure that everyone in the lower basin is doing their respective part. The lower basin states still have a lot of work to do to hash out who's going to take what kind of cuts once a whole basin deal happens. So basically, we need to figure it out at the levels of the lower basin and upper basin first, and then the lower basin states can then negotiate and argue. And I think in that case, that might bring some tougher conversations between the states in the lower basin.
Yeah, I imagine California would be like, don't be hypocrites, Nevada. You love all that agriculture that we give you. You love your almonds and your hay and alfalfa for your horses.
And lots of vegetables.
Lettuces.
Yep.
Guess what? CityCast has some news. I'm Sean McPherson, the host of CityCast Twin Cities.
And I'm Jane Sihu, and I'm the host of CityCast Seattle. Hey, if you have a friend in one of our cities, can you text them for us?
Yeah, something, simple like, hey, how's that rash doing? And do you listen to podcasts? Because I have one you're definitely going to like. After that, tell them that CityCast has helped you become more informed, more involved, and more connected to your amazing city.
We're going to help that person you know in Seattle who's been trying to make friends.
And we're also going to do that for that guy you only kind of knew in college who moved back to the Twin Cities after graduation.
Don't we all have that guy?
Yeah, and usually that guy is named Todd.
So did you text them yet?
Jane, let's just wait a minute. We don't want to rush anybody. We'll do a little small talk. How's everything going in Seattle?
Beautiful, beautiful. Fall leaves popping. How about Twin Cities?
Today, beautiful and sunshiny in St. Paul. Okay, Jane, I bet they are done texting by now, and I just want to remind them, hey, you, please tell that friend to subscribe to CityCast Twin Cities or Seattle, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or if you don't want to text them and you're really just on Instagram sending them DMs all the time with like funny videos, send them a DM of our latest videos. You can find us at CityCast Twin Cities or CityCast Seattle on Instagram. Thanks.
You mentioned that the allocations aren't going to change. That would be a long shot if it's even being considered at all. But I mean, our city is growing like mad. And we're talking about expanding even further out to a new airport, which is going to create infrastructure expansion. We're talking about raiding BLM lands and turning them into development. As far as you're concerned, and these water allocations, is anyone or should anyone be considering the projected growth of Las Vegas?
That is something that's really important to consider. I think right now, in line with the conservation that Las Vegas has worked to instate for their indoor uses like water recycling, they've also started to do a lot of work on the outdoor water uses. So we know people get paid to rip out their grass, and now there's talk about how we replace septic tanks, and we can't use Colorado River water to water non-functional turf. And so we're still figuring out ways to do more conservation and efficiency in Nevada. So that's good. We've also done a really good job at sort of decoupling population growth from water use. So we can basically keep growing our population and conserve and recycle enough water to still use about the same amount. I think when we get into industrial growth, which could certainly happen and is certainly happening in Southern Nevada, the conversation is less about will growth happen or not, and more about how can we grow really smartly? How can we make sure that the right industries are attracted to this area and are building in this area? And that becomes complicated because, it's not like we have a king of water in the state that says you can or cannot come here, So that, it presents some new challenges.
A Poseidon, if you will, with, all power. So you're saying data centers, like data storage centers, which are notorious for water usage, might not be a good pathway for Nevada to take, even though we are trying to attract them.
Yes, I think that presents some challenges and some things the state's really going to reckon with. I know that Southern Nevada Water Authority was developing a non-regulatory tool that was sort of an assessment for new businesses to assess their water use before they came into this area. And that is something that we haven't seen other states wholesale adopt, but there are other communities. There's a town in Arizona, for instance, that does do a bit more of tying how much water is this new business going to use with should we permit their development in this town. And so that is a potential way Las Vegas could go in the future, or Southern Nevada more broadly could go in the future, and maybe rule out uses that are really high in water intensity, like data centers.
All right, let me change gears a little bit. Let's take off our optimistic goggles for a second that they're going to work this out. And let's say that they cannot come to an acceptable accord for these new challenges. And the feds really do what they have been threatening for a while, that is, come in. Could it change the whole conversation about who gets what? In other words, can the feds benefit states that, I don't know, support Donald Trump and punish those who have a governor who posts provocative memes that make Donald Trump look foolish?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard to answer because we have actually never seen the federal government follow through on a threat to the Colorado River Basin states. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what they would actually do. One area that we know they have a lot of authority in is managing and operating the reservoirs. So they could theoretically decide how much water gets released from upper basin reservoirs down to Lake Mead. They could be talking about releasing water from really small storage reservoirs very high up in the upper basin, like Blue Mesa or Flaming Gorge, down to fill up Lake Powell to protect critical infrastructure. That's another challenge we're facing in the basin right now. Water levels are getting so low that we're having to use kind of alternative ways of pushing water through the dam to get downstream.
Do we know about the Trump administration's attitude towards this water issue? Has it been declared? How could it play out?
I don't think that I have seen anything that's a specific statement from the Trump administration on this issue. And right now, one of the things that's been challenging, or over the last couple of months that's been challenging, is the administration still hasn't brought on a new commissioner for the Bureau of Reclamation. But the Trump administration has invested a lot in acting head of reclamation, Scott Cameron, who has been at all of these meetings with the states and has been very proactive. He and I both spoke at a conference in Colorado together in June. He had been saying then, if the states don't get their act together, we are prepared to step in. So we do have someone from the administration who is very serious about Colorado River issues, who's devoting a lot of time and attention and energy, and is hopefully pushing the states forward towards some sort of agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I would be nervous if I was California right now. They don't seem to be a favored state in this administration's eyes, and any way to hurt them might be something that comes back. That's my comment. What are the next steps now that we are a few days past that deadline?
The most recent news I've heard is that we are setting a new deadline for mid-February. That deadline I know.
The water can got kicked. The water bottle got kicked down the road.
Got kicked down the road, exactly. That deadline was actually already kind of on the books for a more fleshed out proposal. I was really hoping we'd see something, a signal of what the big idea is by this proposal. And I sort of expected we wouldn't see all the details at this point. I'm disappointed that we haven't seen anything at this point. So we don't even know what direction the states are going in. I should also mention that these decision-making processes and negotiations happen under the guise of the National Environmental Policy Act. And that dictates that when decisions are made, they should go out for things like public review and comment, which people like me and other members of the public read and comment on and share our thoughts and provide feedback.
I like that part of our democracy. I hope that all stays in place.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about now, to be honest. If we keep pushing this deadline down the road, will there be enough time for
Mm.
this real democratic process to play out and to allow all of the other organizations, like all of our NGOs who are working on trying to ensure that the environment and species get enough water? Does it allow for our municipal providers who may have other concerns, or hydropower generation, or all these other interests in the river to really participate in the dialogue? Because right now we're really relying on that one person who's the state principal and their sort of technical and legal team in these negotiations.
Let me ask you this. You've spent a lot of time on the ground, literally following the path of the Colorado River and all the stakeholders when it comes to water. What are the stories that you're hearing from the people who are directly impacted, not the bureaucrats who are hopefully doing things in our best interest, but from the people themselves in your journeys?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different stories depending on who you're talking to, because we're essentially trying to cut a pie of water, the pie chart of water you can imagine, in more pieces as the pie chart is shrinking. And that is so challenging, right? So as environmental groups are trying to advocate for more water to preserve the environment in really critical places in the basin or support endangered species, the total amount of water is shrinking and they're up against more competition from other users.
Hmm.
So I think that this heightened competition is a really important story across sectors. I think uncertainty is becoming a really critical story. When you're a farmer and you don't know if you're going to get your water right, you have to plan a long time in advance to think about what you're planting and how much you're planting. And if you are going to switch crops, it's not that easy. You need to think about new equipment and different labor practices and new knowledge. And I think that the uncertainty that a lot of these challenges on the Colorado River are creating for these communities is a really big deal, and is something that's going to become even more prevalent in the future.
Well, ultimate question for you, since this is CityCast Las Vegas, what does this current stalemate mean for Las Vegans? Let me ask you, what's our best possible outcome here?
I would say that the best possible outcome is that the Upper Basin and Lower Basin states come to an agreement where, yes, the Lower Basin takes proactive measures on the front end, but ultimately that the whole basin can come together and everyone can give a little to reduce a huge burden on any individual state, right? We don't want to see Nevada shoulder an unfair burden of these cuts on the Colorado River. So I think that working together to come up with a collective deal, a consensus, is really in Nevada's best interest. The other thing is, if the federal government's making a decision and this goes to the Supreme Court, which it undoubtedly will, if something gets put in place, it's going to face legal challenges
From the states, especially the ones that don't like the outcome. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've seen, court cases about water last decades in the Supreme Court, and we just don't have that time right now. Our water supplies are shrinking so rapidly, aridification is happening so rapidly, that coming up with a state deal, a 7-state consensus deal, is really, in my opinion, in the best interest of all of the states, but especially Nevada, right? They have a small allocation. They're doing a great job in increasing efficiency and conservation, and they want to make sure that they're taking a cut that is, something that they can play a part in the system, but they're not unfairly shouldering a burden there.
Yeah. And, Las Vegas, I'm glad that we're good at this one thing, but it's a lot to ask. Is a stalemate really going to perhaps put a little bit more pressure on us in Las Vegas?
I mean, I think there are always pressures in the Colorado River Basin states to be innovative and to improve the way we use water and save water. And so that idea of integrating land and water use planning before that
Yeah.
you mentioned,
Yeah.
that is like a that is something we should be taking seriously and taking away from these negotiations and saying, okay, maybe we should have some movement on this in ways that we haven't seen before, to an extent we haven't seen before. So I do think there are always pressures to continue innovating in the water conservation sector. I think a lot of the other states are facing pressures to also innovate in the agricultural sectors right now. They're having tough conversations about, how do we preserve higher value agriculture and maybe start phasing out lower value agriculture. I mean, we can grow a lot more houses for the same amount of water than we can grow crops. And that is becoming a really tough conversation in places throughout the Colorado River Basin.
Let me ask you, if we can't get states like Colorado and New Mexico on board, is Las Vegas going to run out of water?
It's a great question. I don't think we'll get to the point where Las Vegas runs out of water, but I do think we could get to the point where we're really strapped on our water supplies and we're potentially paying more for water. We are having to get more creative with where we actually use water. There are already debates going on in Las Vegas about how to preserve old growth trees that give us shade and help us cool the climate while we rip out lawns. But is there going to be a place or a time where we can't even afford in water to water those trees because we're having to meet sort of basic human health needs and safety needs in our community? So I think that I don't want to look at kind of the World War III water scenario, which often gets pitched, but I do think that we could get squeezed more in Nevada. And if we can be proactive now, we could potentially avoid that and still be able to grow economically in the state.
Yeah. So lesson, don't rest on our laurels, continue with innovation.
Yep.
Professor Elizabeth Cobley, thank you so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, please go tell a friend. You could also rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And don't forget, you could support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.